Welcome to TERC Tech Talks with your hosts, Zach, Elise, and Ken. In this two-part episode, we explore how neurodiverse learners and their teachers could use AI tools to support their learning. In part one, with our special guest, Dr. Jodi Asbell-Clarke, we use ChatGPT. Again, I'm Ken Rafanan with
Elise Levin-Güracar.
And as I said, we're here with Jodi Asbell-Clarke, who is a researcher and senior leader at TERC, and she has a new book called Reaching and Teaching Neurodivergent Learners in STEM, Strategies for Embracing Unique Problem Solvers, which you can get from Routledge and Taylor and Francis, and I guess all kinds of places on the web.
All fine. It's even in Walmart.
And Jodi, I saw in your bio that you've been at TERC for quite a while. Maybe you can give folks an overview of what you've done.
Sure. Well, I have to say after last night that I have been at TERC. I came to TERC the year that the Blue Jays last won the pennant. So it's been a while. I started in curriculum development and professional development of teachers in STEM, as many of us do, and ended up doing a lot of research in how technologies were used first by teachers, like some of the original online professional development programs for teachers. And eventually founded EDGE, the Educational Gaming Environments Group, co-founded with some of my colleagues. And we studied game-based learning for we still do. So it's been about 16 years we've been doing that. But through that, we dabbled in a lot of things that we might talk about today related to AI. We did a lot of machine learning early on in data mining to look at how data could be used to understand how children were learning or learners were learning in games and how that could be used to then adapt the games and inform teachers about the learning. And in about 2015, we were lucky enough to get a grant to study the beloved TERC game Zoombinis and use our methods to look at how kids were learning computational thinking in Zoombinis. Through that work, we realized strong connections between STEM and computational thinking, game-based learning, and neurodiversity. Some of the kids that were falling through the cracks, that were most challenged in class, but possibly the most talented sometimes in some of the problem solving that games and particularly logic games like Zoombinis bring out, we noticed they were becoming rock stars. And teachers were seeing them differently. Their peers were seeing them differently. They saw themselves differently. So we really, for the last 10 years or so, have been studying the connection between neurodiversity and STEM, and thus my book. And I've also spent a lot of time, before my book, I spent a lot of time co-teaching in a middle school classroom and doing project-based learning in several middle school classrooms. And through that have first of all, gathered a lot of stories that are in my book, but also a lot of strategies for differentiation, which is going to inform some of the stuff that we talk about today, I think.
Yeah, that's great. So maybe we can, you brought up the idea of like games for learning, and that was kind of for us kind of a new perspective on how we might help kids learn. And I think the AI stuff that we're seeing possibly can give us opportunities for more of that kind of different way in.
Yeah, I mean, I think of AI in a lot of different ways with education. One is big and scary. One is, this fast-moving train we have to adapt to. But also, I think about, how kids, teachers, and learners are going to use AI tools in the classroom, but also how researchers can use AI to advance methods that we've been trying all along. And as I said, this machine learning and data mining, that's not necessarily new. Colleagues of mine have been doing that. Some of us at TERC and others have been doing that for decades or more. And it's just really exciting about how that could be advanced by AI.
Well, and so much cheaper to get transcripts.
Incredible. Yes, cheaper and time, maybe not in environmental costs, but we'll.
That for sure. Okay, well, you had told us that there are a few different tools that you've been looking at lately, and Elise has kindly agreed to be the the screen share. So maybe we can jump to one of those now
Well,
because
can we start
Elise,
with just, I don't, ChatGPT or Claude or whatever general LLM you use? Because I think there's some basic stuff that might be
yeah.
helpful even before we get into individual tools. And I will say, while I'll show you some individual tools, I have varying opinions on them. I generally would start with an LLM anyway, because that's it, because they're generative, I guess. And then the other tools, once you know what you want to do, they can help, I think. So, so I was thinking, basically what I'm going to talk about all of today is differentiation. So how can we use AI to help meet the needs of individual learners in the class? So, if we start by just getting ask ChatGPT for a basic, let's say a fractions unit for grade 3 or something.
So maybe we can say a little bit more about differentiation in case there's folks who aren't
Sure.
familiar with the term.
Yeah, thanks for that. So implicit in everything I do, and I think everything we do at TERC, is the idea of inclusive education, and that we want to bring the most folks into the experience, and that as possible. And for that, it means offering multiple avenues into the experience, multiple representations and ways you can engage with the information you need, and possibly multiple ways of expression of how the learner can express back what they've learned. So, providing those multiple ways is very difficult and requires a lot of creativity and time that AI can really help with. But what it offers is that the same learning goal can be approached by all different learners depending on, where they're coming from. And I mean that cognitively, physically, socially, culturally, linguistically, all those things.
Yeah,
Does that help?
yeah.
Okay. So let's get just a typical straight up unit. Um, oh, 2 to 3 weeks. Okay. I was thinking activity, but even still, can we scroll down and yeah.
It's like they've given us standards, learning goals, vocabulary, and a lesson sequence.
Yeah. So actually, let's can we ask it instead for a fractions lesson for grade 3?
Maybe we can choose one of the ones that they said that would be
Yeah, I was thinking about that, but I don't trust it to give me something I would get. I think when I did this first time, I guess I did write unit. I don't, but I must not have asked for that. I probably wrote activity or something like that.
I mean, it's a good
Maybe we could
idea
ask
to
for one
not
on unit
trust.
fractions,
Sure,
since it's an earlier one in the unit. Okay, so
sure.
they're ready to teach grade 3 lesson plan focused on unit fractions, complete with objectives, material, step-by-step activities, differentiation, and assessment ideas.
Great. Okay. So this is going to be a pretty dry unit. It's probably going to use manipulatives, maybe, okay, a fraction pizza, right? So, the same pizza that every kid's ever seen when they used them. And, but it does the basics. I'm sure it cuts it up into pieces and has it compare the pieces to the whole and all that kind of stuff, what you would expect.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here and I'm going, I know I have this kid who stayed up late watching the Blue Jays win the pennant last night and loves baseball. And the only thing that this kid is going to pay attention to, is going to keep him awake or her awake, is baseball. So let's ask to adapt this lesson for an interest in baseball, for a student interest in baseball, maybe.
I don't know if you've ever had all these arguments. I think, Elise, you've been part of these in our long work with fractions. Is even the idea of using a circle is sometimes just a crazy idea. The circles are so hard to deal with.
Well, let's see what it gives us here. So
Looks like it's going to be using examples from baseball and a baseball diamond visual.
Mhm.
A
Paper
baseball
circle
fraction field, whatever that
worksheet.
means.
Yeah. And paper circles or baseball cutouts.
Yeah. You can't cut out your room. So, okay, here's the one I thought was neat when I did it before is probably close to the direct instruction, that to start thinking about like almost the stats that happen in baseball. Or first of all, yeah, the baseball diamond has quarter, half, triple, not triple, three quarters. And but then you can also, there was a bunch of stuff that you could get into with like how many hits, how many um how many times did they get to base out of the whole, how many times they went up, and I'm not saying all the words right, but it did generate for me several different ways to get into fractions from baseball.
Wait,
So, pardon me?
can we go? So this is a little math nerdy. So
Yeah, go for
we're allowed to do math nerdy things. Can you go back to the first example that it did, Elise?
The one about the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. One baseball and two players that want to practice catch. How can we share it fairly?
So it's interesting. So you can't cut a baseball. That's great, right? Like this
it.
idea of a fraction doesn't apply to everything. But then this thing of sharing practice time, if they're practicing catching together, you're both practicing at the same. So it's this it
It has
recognized the applicability of fractions to one situation that they wouldn't apply, but then it didn't think of like, oh well, actually you can both be practicing at the same time. Like if you're playing catch, you're both practicing throwing and catching at the same time, and
right,
you don't have to.
unless you're playing with a batter and an outfielder.
Right, right. So
So,
anyway, it's this interesting thing of like, well, we have only one half
that's right.
is for you and then one half is for
It
me.
didn't take the entire cultural context to and apply
Right.
it, which that is was going to be one of my hugest warnings is it only knows what it knows, and it's taking it from, what it thinks. I think it actually, when I cut through it, does a pretty good job at, oh, I know what I asked. I asked for a standards-based lesson on fractions, and it came out with something similar, mapping it to standards. And then it actually said, do you want me to map this to Texas or, specific standards? And so I thought it did a pretty good job of that. Um, and then coming up with an activity. But then, as you say, the practicality and the subtleties of the activity, that's where we get into the things. But so when I did this, I also thought, okay, who's my other kid? They don't like baseball. They want something gross. So I thought, what happens when you say adapt this for a salamander? And where will it go?
Should we try that?
Salamanders are not gross.
Yeah,
They're
go
not
for it.
gross, Joe. I really like salamanders.
Yeah, and I was really afraid of where this was going to go.
Context of salamanders.
Yeah.
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
I don't know how to spell that. Somebody help me.
Sal,
SAL.
Manders, I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think ChatGPT cares.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it probably been.
Okay, now we get a fun and science-rich theme.
That's right. That's right.
The science
And
teachers will be very happy.
vocabulary. Now it wants us to have paper circles that can be used for logs or ponds.
Yeah, they did a habitat one. Oh, this is different than the one I did too. The one they saw. But
If three salamanders are sitting on one log, how can they share the space fairly? So this is
what I
interesting because
did
we don't have a
notice about.
circle.
Oh, I'm sorry, Lise. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, now they're not directing us to start with a circle. We're getting a log, which is kind of more of a number line
But
model.
they've also, that's a lot, but they've also really done in both these a lot of abstraction, which I worry about. Particularly the direct, if spends half its life in water and half on land. And the other one, they've moved to these kind of abstract concepts that they're dividing rather than manipulatives. Maybe that's intentional. Maybe you do the manipulative first and stuff, but I think the teacher would need to do a lot of scaffolding to get there for the, especially for the younger grades.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and so I like the one there was something similar about, it eats 1 out of 4 and stuff, and I'm glad they didn't cut the salamander. I was really glad that they didn't cut the salamander, which is I'm sure what that third grader really wanted them to do, but
I mean, it didn't even ask to cut the worm into 4 pieces.
that's right. That's right. But it would live on, wouldn't it? So another thing we can do with this lesson is say, how would you incorporate UDL or Universal Design for Learning into this lesson? And Design for Learning has become a buzzword for many things, but really there are some core concepts that cast the people who, I can't remember what it stands for, but the people who created or founded this principles, they put out, and it has to do with representations and well, it will to actually, if you put it in, I don't even have to use my working memory. It will remind me what
Okay.
this stuff is.
And again, with its encouragement of it.
That's
That's
right.
a
But
fantastic
I
one.
think that's probably because Elise is saying please and thank you, because I don't know that it gave that as much around to me or um so yeah, so the multiple means of engagement, multiple means of representation, and multiple means of action expression. So this is similar to what I was talking about before. But it goes through and it offers some pretty decent choices, I thought. Whether they can draw, build, or color. Wow, this is really small on my screen, so I'm gonna have to lean into the camera and look funny, but can move,
Trying to make it a little bigger.
yeah, maybe. I kind of liked that collaboration one too. How can 4 salamanders share one log? And you can talk about dividing it equally in quarters, or no, the big cheese gets half a log, and the rest of them have to divide the other half for. Um, and yeah, challenge cards. Somewhat they had some vocabulary on one of the oh, this is multiple means of engagement, and then we'll go to multiple means of representation. There's drawing, folding, talking, um, and then on the third one, and having the real world context. And then the third one, the actions and expressions, again, there's the different ways that they might express. And none of this is rocket science, and none of this is really new to a lot of people. But I think what we'll do to the overwhelmed teacher who just wants to get that kid who never engages with, but loves salamanders, get them going. We'll just give some ideas of like, oh, I'll bring clay. They can make a clay salamander, and then they can start dividing it. And it's not that the teacher wouldn't have known that. It just they can't think that many for 30 students, they can't think that creatively for all their 30 students, and this is just helpful, I think.
Mhm.
But they still need to be the guide of thinking, okay, so Ken loves salamanders, and but Ken doesn't like the touch of sticky clay, really doesn't like it. So I better have blocks, right? And that's the teacher's judgment of knowing the kid and also knowing enough about the topic that they can go what you said earlier, Ken, like, ooh, circles, that's not as easy to divide as something else. So
So it makes me wonder, like, there's so many things that could make it actually better and more useful for teachers, right? So when we ask for the lesson, the base lesson, so UDL is kind of the best practice. Why doesn't it incorporate it into the thing right from the beginning? Right, like it gives you a bare lesson the first time, and then you have to know to ask for more. Why
You know,
wouldn't it give us more to begin with?
so I was just listening to Zach, our colleague Zach Alstead, talk about multi-agents, and
Yeah.
there's a form of the word agent I keep on not being able to say, but um, and talking about how one agent is responsible for, in this case, making sure the standards are met. And
Yeah.
one agent is responsible for making sure that, the language level for a teacher is right. And one is, and now we're saying one is going to be about UDL and one is going to, you can also do, if we wanted to do one more, you could do it for English language learners and it would do, something else. So I think the answer to your question is those different agents work independently underneath the hood. And so it's the prompts, it's you as the user that needs to call those prompts up. And if you value UDL, you put UDL into your prompt. If you value standards, you put standards into your prompt. But we could have written right from the start, I want a standards-based lesson for salamanders with UDL considerations. And it
Yeah.
probably would have given us something similar to this last one. I think that's true.
I mean, it's an interesting design choice they've made, right? Like when you ask, whenever it asks for a lesson, it knows to pull up certain agents, right?
Yeah.
Like when you said third grade, then it's
Right.
thinking grade standards. But it could have automatically engaged these other things, and they've chosen not to. Like maybe it's cheaper for them. Obviously, you're serving up less stuff, but you're also then telling the random teacher, like, this is a good lesson as it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, I don't think ChatGPT is telling them this is a good lesson. I think ChatGPT is saying, here's a lesson, and it's the teacher's job still to determine whether it's a good lesson or not. I think that's the disconnect is when we think that an LLM is giving us the best of something.
Hmm.
It's giving us what it mined from its data, and that's all it knows.
I mean, it's such an interesting such an interesting philosophical, then in
But
which case,
that's our job as educators. That's the literacy question. There's two things that I would say drive what I was just showing with this differentiation is one that relies on the teacher. One is that literacy component that is this is an idea generator. It's not saying this is an optimal. It's like a recipe book. Every recipe, well, I suppose they are saying this is a tested recipe. Never mind. That's not a good analogy. But the other thing that differentiation always relies on the relationship between the learner and the teacher. It not only relies, that is fundamental. That's the core. And AI will never be able to have that relationship with the kid. And so teachers, um, that's the value. And what AI can do is release all the other, not all, but a lot of the other stuff from teachers associated with differentiation so that they can have time to build that relationship. That's my effort, my hope for it.